Well, hello everyone, and a warm welcome to another episode of our Meet the Oasis team series. My name is Andrea, and I'm the head of HR and culture here at Oasis Protocol Foundation. And as you know, this is a live session, so you're more than welcome to ask questions during the event. We will do our very best to answer all of them towards the end of this call. Today, we have a very intriguing conversation ahead of us, and I'm very excited to have you meet one of our star engineers who joined Oasis very early on and has worked on several key projects to our technology. He's also regularly conducting workshops at blockchain conferences and is the face behind our monthly engineering updates that our community longs for each month. So introducing to you all our one and only Matevz Jekovec. Hi, Matevz.
Hey. Hi, Andrea.
Thanks for joining us and taking the time for our community to have this opportunity to meet you. Your role here at Oasis is very diverse, Matevz. And of course, you're needed in many different projects that you're working on and our team is working on. So can you please talk to us to start off with a little bit more in detail about what the role that you occupy here at Oasis is, what it looks like, and what are your main tasks and priorities?
My main concern is basically the technical documentation. So what you see on the docs.oasis.io. And there, the website looks pretty simple, but it actually combines the documentation from, I think, 6 repositories, combines numerous examples, code snippets, and all those snippets are basically live snippets taken out from specific examples. So my role here is basically that all the examples work, that they are tested, that they are useful. So yes, primarily I'm writing a number of examples, demo dApps, for example. So yeah, this is my primary concern. One could probably say the DevX, the developer experience. So all the tooling behind the scenes that developers who build on top of the Oasis platform use. You also mentioned that I write the monthly engineering reports. That's also true. And it's a bit demanding because basically you need to cover all the teams, all the engineering teams. So it's not just the core team. We also have the wallet team, and then the networking node operators team, the Explorer team, and finally the DevX team. So usually I go through, it's not just, writing very superficially about what someone does, but putting new features into context for our users to know what's going on and for our developers to use. So I usually go through their PRs, reading the actual code that was merged in and try to make sense out of it. Of course, I don't know everything. I need to communicate usually with specific individuals. But yes, this is also one of my tasks. And finally, so I'm helping. It's not just writing the documentation. When something is missing, I usually jump in and extend the DevX tooling we offer. So for example, you may know the Docker image we have that you can run the whole Sapphire, the whole Oasis blockchain, including the Sapphire paradigm on your own computer as a local net. Then I'm also debugging the Sapphire TypeScript client wrapper, the Go and Python bindings we also offer, for example. The Oasis CLI is also an interesting tool one may know of. It's all kind of tools, around the core Oasis node. And naturally, when there is the hackathon or a conference, I also go there and hold the workshop. Stuff like that.
A lot. And I think we would all agree that you're doing an excellent job. We all love your newsletters and monthly updates, and obviously also your workshops, which we will talk more about later on. But first, I would love to hear your journey, right? We all have our own journey, transitioning from Web 2 to Web 3. We all had our doubts. We all had our moments of, is this a good way to go? Years and years ago, I know that you were very early joining Oasis, so you know the technology, you know the details about the vision and everything else. So I would love for us to hear more about that from your perspective. How did that go for you?
Okay, so computer science and programming is not only about blockchain. So my engineering background was probably started in early 2000s. So there I was a strong supporter of the open source, the open standards, open document formats, Linux, because at that time times were different, so there was this huge Microsoft vendor lock-in ecosystem. The huge majority of apps were desktop applications running on Windows only, and if there was this Open Office or LibreOffice alternative to Microsoft Office, those were the times when we fought, to use the open standards, open documents, so we can share content freely, right? And then when it comes to web, this was like the web, I guess, 1.1 times. So you have that Internet Explorer versus Netscape / Mozilla wars going on. And to get most out of your web app would mean using ActiveX control on Windows, or Flash plugin, or Java plugin. So those were different times. But I'm even at that time, I was a strong proponent to have open standards to follow, to use open source as much as possible, because this gives you freedom, this gives you power. The open source software assures that you know what you are running on your own computer, basically. So and then in student times, when I was studying the computer science, I was also leading a programming and Linux course at my former school. And those were nice times. I mean, I also prepared my pupils, my students, for the programming competitions at that time. I also contributed to some open source projects. I was a musician. I played the piano and sang. And there was this software called NoteEdit for writing music scores back then, which only ran on Linux. And of course, I was patching that and contributing to that project. And then a rewrite was needed because the new version of the Qt library was released, and it wasn't compatible with the NoteEdit. And so we decided to start our own music writing software called Canodus. So that was a truly cross-platform music score editor running on Linux, Mac, and Windows. So this also finished. This ended up writing my diploma thesis for my study as a plugin, which analyzed which actually built an index on top of your music, on top of your melodies, and then tried to extract the theme, the main theme of your music score. So this was my diploma thesis.
That's very original.
Yeah, it was nice. But my point being, I was building that plugin. The plugin was open source, and it was running on Canodus, which is also open source. So I was always struggling to use the tools and to build tools for other people to use freely and liberally. Yeah. Then when I graduated, I was working for a hosting company and domain reseller here in Slovenia, building the enterprise applications in PHP for CRM and issuing invoices, accepting the payments and stuff like that. Yeah. At that time, I also got married, got a daughter, so graduated and so on. And then I started on my PhD, which was on parallel algorithms for text indexing, algorithms and data structures that are efficient, that are succinct, Yeah, and I was also teaching at that time at the university, the algorithms and data structures course, obviously. And yeah, one of probably my achievement back there was in 2017 when I was awarded the the TA, the teaching assistant of the year. And yeah, then at the end of the PhD, which I didn't finish yet, I suppose.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Jerne was there, our director of the Oasis Foundation, and he was, gathering the team of developers. So yeah, that's when I
Well,
finished my studies.
and
Pretty
that's
much.
what yeah, you started flirting with Oasis, if we could call it that way. And I guess from the journey that you've described and shared with us, I can say impressive, eventful, and very creative, it sounds like. But also now we all know where you get your superpowers for workshops, presentations, and public speaking, because you had a lot of practice back at uni. So really well done on that. Now talk to us more about that flirtatious beginnings with Oasis and why Oasis. Like you said, you have met Jerne, he was building a team, starting the project. But what was that main differentiator that kind of convinced you that Oasis would be a good project to join?
Okay, so I met Jerne back in 2011, I guess. So he was also studying, that happened to be the same room than I was. But of course, Jerne was doing his work on cyber attacks and trustless protocols, networking. I was more on the algorithms and data structures side. But it was interesting back in 2000, I think it was 2012, I read an article on slotech.com. That's a Slovenian geek site, website. And I said, oh, Bitcoin, what's that? Another, some scam for centralized, someone wants to take your money away or something. And then I went ahead and read the white paper, and I said, okay, sounds interesting. And then I actually went there and looked into the implementation, because I wanted to see if this is real, And I saw that the project was open source. I tried to audit the code, and it was, that shit was real, It wasn't scam. It was actually a distributed peer-to-peer money. And they solved this double spending problem, which I actually wasn't aware of it before. But the problem itself sounded, logical. If you have a distributed network, you don't trust anyone. So the question is, like, what is the truth? Is the truth something that majority thinks is the truth? Perhaps, I don't know. So these are the issues that really I was attracted to them. These are not obvious problems. Right. So then in December, I think it was December 2018. Jerne already finished his PhD. I was just submitting a paper on my parallel sliding suffix tree data structure. And yeah, then Jerne contacted me if I would be willing to work on this privacy preserving blockchain. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, but how can you do privacy in distributed environment where everyone can see everything?
Everything.
And that's when I was I first learned about this Intel SGX technology. And yeah, I sucked at cryptography. I didn't have a slight idea about privacy back then. I was programming on other areas of computing. But yeah, that's when I joined the Oasis, and I also implemented some initial data structures for, like the Merkleized Patricia trie back then. But then I soon realized that the core team will probably focus on stuff like proof of stake networks, security, cryptography, and everything else around it. And I'm probably the one that will try to follow them and ask questions. Ask questions like, right, so how do I now use that platform to build something on top of it? because we didn't look at Ethereum back then. We were building our own Rust-based WASM environment and language for smart contracts. Not the smart contracts we know today, but slightly different smart contracts. And the whole SDK, the whole API was in the cloud. We didn't know what to expect from the platform yet. So yeah, even back then I was trying to write a Hello World program in Rust running on Cypher paradigm back then in 2021, I think. Yeah, and then the natural order of steps followed. Like when Sapphire, this EVM compatible paradigm, was introduced, we needed tooling for that as well, and kind of moved from the pure raw core team more towards our users, either developers or just ordinary token holders, or maybe some other personas as well. And that's also when the documentations and all the examples ignited.
That's very interesting. And also reading the chats and comments in the live stream inbox, there is an individual who complimented your past workshops. He really likes how, or she really likes how you explain things. The question that this person has that kind of touches the topic that you were just talking about is, do you think that learning Rust is more future-proof than learning Solidity for a blockchain developer? What's your take on that?
That's a good question. If you want to build a dApp today, you will write it in Solidity. That's the fact. Rust may be a good tool. I mean, you need to know why do you want to use Rust, because it's a very specific, a very memory management strict language. And I remember when we implemented this Merkleized tree in Rust, it was extremely difficult because you cannot have floating references to objects inside Rust freely. So the whole point of Rust is it's very restrictive. Once you get it compiled, then you're mostly there, I suppose. So personally, I wouldn't take Rust for writing smart contracts just yet. Yeah.
Fair enough. I think that's a solid answer. Thank you. I would love for us to go back to your workshop skills, your passion for educating people. And I know recently, back in April, you attended an all-privacy conference in Amsterdam, EVDAM, and you hosted a very engaging, a couple of very engaging workshops, especially for developers, right? Very educational. So can you perhaps share some highlights from that workshop with our community for those developers or people who are interested in the highlights but couldn't attend?
Sure. So first, this ETHDAM conference was really special to me because all the previous conferences I was at were more probably marketing oriented. I don't know. So imagine those huge conferences spending millions for renting the place, huge marketing efforts, a swarm of people wanting to sell to you whatever they want to sell. And this is blockchain, right? Well, this is not blockchain. And the team behind the ETHDAM, I really love them. So clearly, it's run by privacy-focused, some Dutch cypherpunk movement, a number of volunteers. That's obvious. And the listeners to my workshop and also the hackathoners in the other room were strongly enthusiastic as well about it. So it's not, it's not a commercial conference. It's more like a gathering of cyberpunks, geeks that care about privacy. Right. So the workshop I had on Friday, I think, the first day of conference, was actually a continuation of the one I had week before. So it's a Sapphire one-on-one talk. Yeah, it's online, so you can watch it as well. But basically, I introduce basic tooling for writing smart contracts or other dApps, also the front end part on Sapphire. So why is this important? We have slightly different tooling than Ethereum. For example, we don't use Etherscan or Block Scout on explorers. We use our own explorer. You can also check it out now. It's explorer.oasis.io. And that one indexes all our paratimes, so not just the one and only Ethereum chain, for example. We index both the Sapphire and Emerald currently. Cypher is in the works, and also the consensus layer. And there is some other tooling, for example, the wallets, when you want to start and you don't have any tokens to pay the gas fee. We have the faucet for that, and then you need to use our wallet if you want to move your tokens around from one chain to another chain, for example. And lastly, we have our own TypeScript wrapper, which wraps the MetaMask instance in your browser. And the idea is that the transactions you submit are encrypted. So this wrapper basically, it injects inside when you want to submit the transaction. It then injects inside and encrypts the transaction for you. And this is an end-to-end encryption, basically. So none of the intermediaries between can see what's inside the transaction. The transaction is executed. It's decrypted and executed inside the very EVM engine running inside Sapphire. So inside a trusted execution environment, inside a safe environment. So there's no one that can actually see what your transaction was about. Right, and I really enjoyed it because next door there was a hackathon going on, and when you see so many, it was mostly like 20-year-olds, students, I suppose, from all areas, fields of engineering and also non-engineering, and they are using your platform, your tooling, your libraries to solve their problem. It's a very warm feeling, and I liked it because they asked the right questions. They have their own Mac there, and something didn't work out, and I was there to help them out to fix stuff, and of course open bug reports and do some PRs on our side as well. So the folks there at the hackathon were very, in my opinion, innovative. So we have this wonderful Internet of Things, I think it is a blockchain of things project using Raspberry Pis to take measurements and then store them safely on a blockchain, for example. And some other projects like two-factor authentication, the password management problem, basically a plugin for your browser that stores keys distributedly on a blockchain, in contrast to centralized, one password services. And then some other ones, for example, the content publishing project I also liked for writing a book. And then when someone pays you in tokens, then you actually publish the book or reveal them next chapter, for example. And we have that advertising project, which is a privacy preserving advertising and so on. Yeah.
It was a fantastic event, and I agree. Creativity and innovation around solving these challenges and using our technology as one of them was really impressive to see. As we are touching your Sapphire one-on-one workshop and also all the educational content that you have been creating around it, there's a live question that came from one of our community members, and they're asking if we can expect more tutorials similar to the Sapphire 101 from you.
Yeah, so the Sapphire 101 was, I suppose, the first, thorough, complete 1-hour workshop we built, we wrote. So I think my goal is actually when our tooling matures and we introduce new versions of our tools, that I just try to regularly update the Sapphire 101 course, maybe, or just leave it to the 101 workshop for now, and to have it to have it maybe twice a year, new version of the workshop coming out and just covering the same material, but that it's compatible with the latest versions of our tooling. And then when specific topics come out, for example, the account abstraction, the guestless transactions, what else? The ROFLs, the runtime off-chain logics, for example, upgradable contracts. So these are specific topics I'd like to have in our technical documentation under the Sapphire part, for example, as a devoted chapter to that specific problem, along with the working example, where you can first read the chapter and then try to play with actual code and maybe use that as a base for your project. So that's my current goal, how to push the documentation and learning material forward.
Okay, that's exciting. And I think that answers the question perfectly. Thank you. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the privacy of things and Web3. I'm very curious to hear what you think around mainstream adoption of Web3, and what, in your opinion, are some of the greatest challenges or obstacles that we're facing, or Web3 is facing to become mainstream adopted?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a very broad topic. So I mentioned the times around in beginning of 2000s where we had this mixture of desktop plugins integrated inside the web browser and the Web 1-ish like apps, which were running only on Internet Explorer or on Windows. So in 2008, I think Chrome was released, and the browser, and Google started to transform this web technology around us. So the apps started to change from being a Web 1 desktop only to being a cross-browser, cross-platform, true Web 2 native applications. So you didn't need any Flash plugins anymore, or any other plugins to have a fully interactive website which can actually do something useful for you. So this is great, and before Linux users were discriminated, obviously, because they couldn't run half of the apps, and now even desktop applications are being migrated to a web application, and then just shipping the browser alongside your application to deploy it, and then you suddenly have a bunch of cross-platform applications there for free from the developer's point of view. So this is something we haven't seen 10 years ago. There was 99% for Windows and a very, very negligible percent for Linux. And now if you take whichever desktop app you have, I don't know, Slack or Zoom or whatever, you really there's this strong push towards having one code base written as a web app and then just wrapping it around as a web browser, wrapping the web browser around and shipping it as a standalone application for your desired platform. Right, but still, we have this Web 2 applications now, and the world is great. But there's one thing missing, right? So where's the open source here? I mentioned earlier that the desktop applications running on your computer, you cannot trust unless you know what the source is. And now we have the web applications, so the front end on your web browser works, but you have no idea what the web application works behind the scenes, right? The backend of the application is a mystery to you. So here I think we have a number of opportunities, So for example, if you take the trusted computation term, I also touched briefly the trusted execution environment before, but this is a movement of a slightly broader movement called the trusted computation. So if you have something running somewhere, do you trust that the result was computed in a way that you expected it to be computed? So you have this runtime, this executable, and maybe this runs on a server somewhere outside of your reach, and then you want to know that that process is really the one you send it to be executed, that there is no one spying on you, that there is no one changing the behavior of that application. So this is something that the trusted computing term relates to. And one of my visions, I think, that may happen in the future is, if you take, so for example, if you take the HTTPS, the secure socket for the HTTP, for browsing the web, you have this green padlock on the left side of your URL, and this means that the connection is secure, right? That no one can make a man in the middle attack. No one can read your data, spy on you. Okay. Now, what I imagine is something similar to what we know from our blockchain world. If you have a smart contract and you verify that smart contract, and you have this check mark in Etherscan that this contract was verified, and you can browse the source code. You can see the source code of the smart contract, and you have this specialized auditing firms that go through that smart contract code and say, okay, this seems to be a safe code, and people can trust their data, their funds, whatever, to that application. And I imagine that in the future, it would really be cool to have this maybe green check mark left of your URL, and that would say, okay, this application running on the other side of the web application inside the backend is verified, and you can see the source code here, and you can trust it that your data is being treated as they should be, that they don't leak anywhere. So stuff like that. So back to Web3 world, the Ethereum also supported this contract verification. So this is nothing new, right? But what Oasis did here is that, what if we had the smart contract source code public? So this is already the thing that the smart contract verification does, that it gives you the source code, and you can rest assured that some smart contract specific address is what it's claiming to be. But the data it operates on is all public on Ethereum. So whatever you send, all of the transactions, the whole ledger, the smart contract state, everything is publicly available, publicly visible. So if you think about it, this pretty limits the usage of the Web3 applications we know today. And what Oasis did is, okay, what if we combine the two? What if we combine the public code, the smart contracts that are publicly available, the source code is publicly available and verified. What if we combine that with the data which can be encrypted, which can be private? Okay. And this is what we do with our trusted execution environment with this Intel SGX technology, to assure that when the smart contract is executing, it decrypts the state it needs, and then it executes what it needs to execute, and then write the result back, or maybe if it's a query, it sends the result back to you right away. So we basically solve a number of problems here. Like we solve the trusted execution problem, the trusted computing, that you can rest assured that your data is not leaking anywhere. And so this is definitely the thing, the feature that will play an important role in the future. But that's not all to it, So, for example, what should we take? For example, the trusted execution environment. Let's talk about it a bit more. So, why do we need trusted execution environment to trust the contracts? Well, the problem is that inside, let's start with the blockchain. The main premise of the blockchain is that you have this trustless network without a central authority. And the double spending problem is tricky to solve, right? Because there is no central truth you can simply rely on. And that's where the whole, block mining mechanism in Bitcoin and the block confirmation in proof of stake networks where there needs to be a consensus made about the truth by building new blocks on top of those. Now, but the problem is, one would say, okay, but why do we need the trusted execution environment? Specifically, if you take for the trusted execution environment on a hardware level, you always need to trust the hardware manufacturer. So what happens if, why would I trust Intel, for example, or some other producer? You just basically move the trust from one consensus to some hardware manufacturer. Now, the problem is, if you want to have the trust that is built inside the network, the theoretical math model of the trusted network, this is really, really awkward. It's difficult to achieve. And even if you have the full consensus and everything done by the book, you will always be limited. For example, you have a fixed number of nodes in your network. If you want to perfectly distribute those nodes geographically, culturally, people with different wealth, knowledge, color of the skin, whatever, but you will still be limited by the network bandwidth, by the number of validator nodes. There will be a hard limit of, I don't know, 100, 1,000, maybe 10,000 of those nodes, and you will never be able to cover like the whole 6 billion or 7 billion people on the planet. So you will always need to make compromises. There is no, perfect security, theoretically bulletproof model out there. So this is why at the Oasis we decided to take this hardware manufacturer trusted execution model to make you could say a security compromise, to use that model and trust Intel to build a chip that we can trust. And by doing so, we can have wonderful things. We can have this end-to-end encryption between the smart contracts and the user. We can have encrypted queries. We can have this confidential computing I talked earlier. And it gets better. I mean, our Sapphire is production ready. It works today, and you can actually have the working smart contracts running today, moving real tokens, doing real confidential computation on a trusted, confidential, encrypted state. So applications like finance, web authentication, data analysis, this is already done today. And as I mentioned, yes, we do rely on Intel SGX, but nothing prevents you from implementing another ZK or multi-party computation layer on top of our technology, just to add, another layer of security and increase the defense in depth by doing so. Okay, so sorry. Okay, so if we just go back to the privacy, there's also one thing that bothers me. So Oasis is developing privacy or confidentially aware blockchain product. But I think we may not be mindful of our privacy in practice, I fear. And this was also one of the takeaways on ETH-DAM talks, as we may have the technology, but are we willing to use it? No. Maybe, I suppose you could say that the privacy is similar to your health. So you don't care about your health, and you maybe just hear issues with your healthcare system on a TV, and you kind of ignore it until you get ill. So, or maybe, for example, if we don't care about the privacy, why don't then we just install cameras in our bedrooms or in our bathrooms? And why don't we allow our governments or local authorities, mayors or neighbors, to simply watch us when we take a shower? It doesn't feel right, right? It doesn't feel right. But when you send an email using Gmail or Facebook, writing messages on Meta, private chats between users on Facebook, for example, or whatever, then the big FANG companies can access those data and read it, right? Well, actually, no, because we have a legislation that prevents big companies to read private data, at least on paper. But still, someone needed to write that legislation down, right? So it's our government which try to protect us from the evil capitalism making profits on top of our work and our lives, right? So this is the GDPR, the CCPA movement out there. But if we turn the discussion around, what makes us trust our governments then? Like at the end of the day, the government wrote the legislation, right? But like they were elected and they are the voice of the people. So it's fair. We should trust them. But it's so tempting, for any government out there to simply install the monitoring technology all around us and try to collect as many data as possible about our banking transactions, stuff we buy, we pay for, phone calls we make, people we spend time with, activities we spend our time on. So because they can analyze thoroughly and learn from our behavior, then in theory that gives them huge advantage when it comes to elections in the future, for example. Or maybe, they can decide whatever they want to decide to. We can have elections, or maybe they would just start to transform the society to become some kind of a dictatorship, authoritarian system we start to live in. And this is wrong. The government should make best, by their deeds, by doing good, and then they should earn votes at elections, and not taking some shortcuts and try to massively monitor the people and then manipulate on top of that. So point being, the people should always have their own, intimacy, some autonomous decision who will they vote for, and the government must simply trust the people. If they don't trust the people, if the government doesn't trust their own people, then this is not a democracy anymore. Like we end up as the Huxley's Brave New World or Orwell's 1984, when no one dares to do anything out of bounds anymore, and because it's simply too risky. So first, you limit yourself for behaving good in public. You stop writing intriguing posts, but over time, your thinking changes, and also the language, the words which originates from the creativity, from being different, start to disappear, and you get a new language, you get a new newspeak, if I use the Orwell's term. Right. So this is, the freedom of speech to post what you think. I think this is right. To overcome censorship, to pay whoever you want to pay. That's the sole reason of Bitcoin. Remember the Assange's issues with the MasterCard when they prevented doing transactions. Right to protest. These are the virtues of the free world, right? So the confidentiality, the confidential Web3, put it this way, is, I think, a very right tool for doing this. And we should always be afraid of any leader, trying to ban it, trying to say this is for financing the terrorism and all the info-apocalypse.
Excuses. Yeah. Well, I think, the way you broke things down, Matevz, I love the fact that you have spin the challenges into opportunities and connected them with all sorts of ways in which we can actually be proactive, like you said, and take care of our privacy and take care of our democracy and take care of all the virtues that we already have and we need to protect with our technology. And obviously, our team is actively working on creating those solutions and acting on those opportunities that you've just mentioned. So thank you for that. Thank you for your thinking, for your thoughts, and sharing that with us. I think that was very constructive. There's another question that came, well, there's a lot of questions actually that came through. in the live chat. But I would love for us to maybe kind of look into the future for a moment and touch on, given the fact that you are keeping a strong pulse on everything that happens at Oasis, what can our community expect in the upcoming months from us?
Yeah, a number of things. So first, if I touch the security, we will upgrade our key manager a bit, so that if anyone knows Sharp, this is multi-sig mechanism for keys, for efficiently rotating the keys. So this is already in and will be part of the 24 release, shipping soon. Then we also are planning to have a more rigorous upgrade proposals for the paratimes. Currently, only I think the signers who built and signed the paratime can also propose the upgrade. This can now be shifted to that you need the consensus in order for the upgrade, for the paratime upgrade to succeed. So if we make a Sapphire upgrade, for example, we would need to first propose it on the consensus layer among those 120 validators. Those should need to should vote, and then if the vote is passed, you can upgrade the paratime. This is currently still in the works, but will be implemented. What else? So we have a contribution from our Harry. So the current problem is that you need to trust. If you have a dApp running on Sapphire, that dApp needs to trust the Web3 gateway you're using. So the Web3 gateway is the web endpoint your browser is connecting to, and the Web3 transforms those calls into the blockchain transactions or blockchain queries. And the problem is that these Web3 endpoints are centralized, and they may be prone to attacks or maybe malicious, and you don't even know about it. And Harry suggested that we make the master public key, which the transactions are encrypted with, available available publicly, so your dApp can derive the ephemeral public key for the current epoch without contacting the Web3 gateway at all. And once you have the transaction encrypted, then you can send it. And if the Web3 gateway is malicious or whatever, he won't be able to decode the transaction anyway. So the current danger was that the Web3 gateway could mimic someone else, and they could send you not the original ephemeral key from the Sapphire, but he can just mix up a new ephemeral key. And when you send a transaction, then the Web3 gateway decrypts the transaction and see what you sent. So this is something we'll be also shipping in 24 release. And the most hot topic, I think, is ROFL. So the runtime off-chain logic. So no pun intended whatsoever. Okay, so about it. So ROFL is basically a runtime which can be executed off-chain. Why? Well, because the on-chain computation is slow, is expensive, and ideally you could run an application which can still be trusted, so it runs inside the trusted enclave, but can run off-chain. So in parallel with the existing Sapphire, you could also run 1 or 2 or 3 ROFLs alongside. And why is this useful? Well, you can write an oracle, Bitcoin oracle, Ethereum oracle, which sends, for example, price feeds to the blockchain. And this way you can trust that oracle because the code would be open sourced, and the very same code will then be executed inside the trusted execution environment ROFL. But as I said, this code could be too expensive, too slow to run as a smart contract, so it runs separately as a separate process on the compute node, and just sends transactions with new price feeds, for example, to the blockchain every few seconds or so. And if you think about it, ROFLs are also ideal for the AI training. If you combine the Intel TDX and the NVIDIA's trusted execution, then you can basically have ROFLs also have this possibility to connect to external web services. In contrast to Sapphire, Sapphire is completely closed. It doesn't have access. It only sees the blockchain. It can't connect to some random HTTPS service, while ROFL can. And then you can make the learning program inside Roffle, download the data, store data encrypted inside the NVIDIA's encryption, encrypted memory, and then perform the AI learning, whatever, and then store data somewhere either on chain or just send it back to the user. So this Roffle, I think, is a giant leap forward, and it's essentially it's runtime running inside the enclave, but we integrated all the other mechanisms. So, for example, if you want to upgrade Roffle, then you can just use our existing consensus mechanism. So you can rest assured, you can trust the Roffles that they are who they are claiming to be. So this is, I think, one of the hottest, technology currently out there for 2024, not only for the upcoming months.
Absolutely.
And, for years to come, yeah.
And I think you've also answered beautifully a question that came in that asked for you to break down Roffle for us. So I think that's really nicely answered. There's probably more things that we can expect, right, throughout the next 6 months or 7. Anything else?
Right. So there's this question about the mobile wallet, I see. So the mobile wallet is also in the beta stage. I just tested it yesterday, and there are still some rough edges, but essentially it works. It's already there. It runs on Android. It runs on iOS. It supports Ledger via Bluetooth. So it's really awesome. Expect this web wallet functionality brought to the mobile, native mobile application. Okay.
That's great. Maybe we can answer yet another question. The Oasis Playground. One of our community team members is talking about this being a great idea for devs to try out and fork existing ideas. Are there going to be any new demos on there, and are the existing ones going to be updated regularly?
So I just added, I think yesterday, 11 new examples. So currently, they need to be updated and added manually. So I have a script in my not long to-do list about connecting to some Git repository and then extracting the most vital information and then making the playground representation of that application. But currently, yeah, if you have an application and you want it to be listed, feel free to open the issue and we will add it to the playground. So no setups there. We will briefly audit the code if there are no malicious things, and we will then publish it. And if you wrote any of the tutorials, Medium articles, if you have any YouTube videos of what your application does, that's even better. So yeah. About updating them, the process is done manually currently. So we will be updating the demo starter project because we will also update tooling along. So expect the official, Oasis covered demos to be updated regularly when the new versions of the tooling are released. But for the non-Oasis maintained projects, these are there mostly for just so just a place where you can see that something existed some time in the past, and then you should contact the author of that original dApp for more information.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, I think, Matevz, it's time for us to look at outside of our technology and focus on Matevz, right? What is Matevz like outside of hacking and developing and testing and presenting and educating and everything that you do? I would love for us to hear more about your personal life. What are some of your hobbies, some of your interests? How do you enjoy and spend your free time?
I'm a father of 3. So I suppose when I'm not behind a computer, I try to, I devote the remainder of the day to my family. And I'm still a musician, so I play the piano and sing. And my kids now also play instruments, so I enjoy accompanying them.
So it's like a family band that you have going on, is it? Enough team members, I guess.
Yeah, you could probably say it like that. Yeah, and then everyone sings, so I'm happy as well. So
that's good.
Also, Renaissance music is my favorite one for the choir. So no extra, loud patterns, just pure lines. Maybe this resembles the programming. I don't know. Right. So, talking of music, I really miss a simple way to share your work without the big companies being involved. So maybe in the future, I'd like to see a way for you to record a piece or write a music, write a score, and then send it not via centralized service, but using a more distributed manner, and that one can also then play back your recording or view your score, and then maybe pay a few cents for that. So currently, if you want to do that, you need to have this DRM, digital rights management software, which is a pain in the ass. So basically, I'd like to see, a way to still have your work encrypted and played back safely on a consumer device, but without having this huge investment if you want your hardware to be DRM compliant. So if you could combine the blockchain with this digital rights and combine it maybe with free software, social medias like Mastodon, I know, that would be pretty ideal for me. I'm also, pro Bitcoiner. So there's this wonderful Slovenian company called Naka. Formerly, it was called Go Crypto, and they developed this proof point of sale terminal, which you can use to pay with cryptocurrencies on your merchant, bars, hotels, restaurants here in Slovenia. And I try to keep and try to pay with Bitcoin Cash or with Bitcoin Lightning whenever possible. I'd also like to, I also run the Bitcoin Lightning node on my own, and I would like to see, more people using Bitcoin Lightning as a form of money, not just some hodling assets investment. I think, yeah.
Well, that would all, those all sound very interesting situations to solve and to develop, which I'm sure you have now sparked a lot of interest with many who also adore music like yourself. Out of curiosity, where can we hear you sing?
Oh, yeah. So the choir I sing in is called De Profundis. So there's a website, deprofundis.si. So you can probably check. There are some recordings there. And I'm not a solo singer that much, so I enjoy singing in a choir. So we're a small team of 15 or so singers. And if you're in Slovenia or anywhere near, you're welcome to attend the concerts and enjoy the classical music.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And it was really lovely to get to know the personal side of you as well. Obviously, very intriguing conversation. I was checking if there are any new live questions that came in, but it seems like we've answered all of them. Now, Matevz, it's obviously been a delight to introduce you to our community. Do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share before we say goodbye?
Yeah, keep up the good work. So I think the Eat Them event was the first event when I really, felt that people are using our platform for solving their problems. Now, our goal is to, spread the word about Oasis, about our platform, to to let the right people know that we have the technology, we have the platform, one can take and build privacy preserving dapps on top of it. And there's also one other thought. Maybe I can borrow from David Chom, who was also at the DAM conference, and he said something like, "Do well by doing good." So try, even if you just learn your living in your daytime job, try to do good things and make world a better place, not just earning big buck.
I think you couldn't have closed this conversation in a better way and with a better thought. Thank you so much for sharing yourself with us today, Matevz. It was a pleasure. And I want to thank everyone in our community who have joined us for this conversation and everyone who's going to listen to this recording afterwards. I guess that's us for today. It's a wrap. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next month for our next Media Oasis team session. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Good luck.
Bye.